What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/NuclearRevenge. Alright guys, first off we have a story, or I guess a series of stories, the first part of which being my personal crusade against the men who destroyed the person I could have become, part 1. Before the story, I want to let you know this is a hard story to read, and it's a hard story to believe, so I get it if you don't believe this story. Also, I did not get back the part of me that was stolen, so this is the story of what made me the sociopath that some of you are familiar with through reading my multiple NuclearRevenge stories. It is a long story about my early childhood, some of which I remember and some I was told by my older sister and mother. Then my revenge against the people who were responsible. I have been debating whether or not to post this due to the criminal behavior, and it is also a hard story to read, but I've had some interesting experiences with the aftermath of posts that I've made here. So, let's get to it. I had a horrible childhood with no father around, and my mother left me alone for most of my childhood. Around the time I was 6, my mother started dating a man we will call Tom, short for stepfather, and Tom had a son that was 10 years older than me. We will call him Jerry, short for stepbrother. At first, everything was fine until they were married and we moved into a house together. It started with my mom and Tom arguing almost every day, and after every argument, when I was alone with Tom, he would tell me how much of a woman my mom was, and this progressed to beating the crap out of me. Ooh. Then tell me that if I said anything, he would kill me and my mother. So every black eye, every bruise, and once he broke my right elbow were all explained away with clumsiness and fights at school. He would always say in passing, "Don't take any wooden nickels." This will become relevant later. This went on for years, until one day that I completely blocked out of my memory, and my older sister had told me this part. My mom had said she was going to leave Tom this particular morning. So when I got home from school that afternoon, this is the scene my sister came home to. I was sitting on the couch, motionless with a completely blank face, while Tom had a gun pressed to my forehead. My mom, who was coming in right behind my sister, was frantically trying to talk him down from, well, killing me. We got away from him eventually, and that's what Tom had done to me. But to be completely honest, it wasn't the worst part about my childhood. I'm gonna keep this part short. There's no reason to get into specifics with this part of my life. As I said, Tom had a son 10 years older than me. Jerry was a kid diddler, and how did I know this? Well, there's no easy way to say this, so Jerry started, touching me inappropriately when I was almost 7, almost every time he had stayed at our house. Obviously, he lived with his mother. He'd sneak into my room, and you get the idea. I, of course, dissolved all of what made me feel. Fun fact about Jerry is he was really active in his church and was on his way to becoming a pastor, but he became a teacher instead. So, let's jump ahead about 10 years. At this point, I'm on every substance known. I've been in and out of halfway houses and being homeless and living in my car. It had been a long time since I have even thought about Tom and Jerry. Till I was at a park across the street from a governmental office that handles stuff like welfare and other things in that vein, when I see a big white truck with the name of Tom's company on the side. He owned a small general contracting company, so I took off after it on foot, and sure enough, it was him, obviously picking up day laborers just like he used to do when I was a kid. Suddenly, like a dam broke in my brain, everything I lived through, everything Tom and Jerry had done to me came rushing into focus in my mind, and I felt rage, and my path became clear. I was going to destroy Tom and Jerry. Cartoon Network already beat you to it, buddy. My revenge. I'll be tweaking the timeline, some of the injuries, and some of the dialogue to keep it anonymous. And who knows, maybe I've made made it all up. Part 1, Tom. I'll start with saying, isn't the internet great? I wrote down his phone number off the side of his truck. I immediately found where he lived, and it just so happened to be the same craphole house where all of my nightmares take place. I'll spare you the tedious details of stalking Tom and casing Tom's house. So as a kid, I spent a lot of time in that house. I knew everything there was to know about it, and to my delight, Tom had done absolutely nothing to the home in the whole 10 years since I lived there. So while following him, he led me right to the home of my second target, and I can't tell you how many hours I put into my logbook of both Tom and Jerry's routine. The night I was waiting for had arrived. I broke into his house, not the first time I did. I made sure to find his gun and make sure that he had no other weapons at his disposal. He had passed out drunk on the couch, the same freaking one he had when I lived there. So I walked through the home, making sure that there was no possible way for us to be interrupted. The stage was set. I pulled up a chair, and this is some of what followed. For obvious reasons, I'm not going to post what was actually said, but you can rest assured that you will have the meat of my fun little play. Side note, the house is in an area I'll call urban desert, and the area is really bad off. You can hear gunfire every night and sirens all night long. It's been like that since I was a kid, and it has gotten worse. In Tom's living room, me sitting on a dining room chair pulled up in front of his couch. I'm holding up Tom's gun, fully loaded, pointed at his forehead. I slap Tom. He sits up, rubbing the side of his face, looks up at me and jumps. What are... I hit him with the butt of his gun. This is important. Remember, I have his gun. I shove a balled up sock in his mouth. You are only going to talk when I ask you to talk. And when you do, you are going to talk in a regular tone. If you yell, you might not see tomorrow. Do you understand? Take the gag out. He does what he's told. What? I punch him in the ribs. I didn't say you could talk, but I'm gonna let you ask me 3 questions. Okay, go ahead. What are you doing here? This! I hit him again in the same spot. If you want money, I don't have any. I hit him in the face. That wasn't a question. And I know, Tom, you have no money. That's not why I'm here. Go ahead and ask me a question. What do you want? For you to be in pain, of course. And you know that you deserve it. Now stand up. Oh, God. He slowly gets to his feet. Side note, when I was a kid, he looked massive and always scared me, even when he wasn't being abusive. But now, I tower over him by 8 inches and outweigh him by at least 80 pounds. Getting darker. Why are you crying like a little baby? Then I slap Tom again. Do you think that I'm going to kill you? Well, I haven't decided whether or not to end your life yet. Then I started with the real beating. I burst one of his eardrums, broke his nose, his arm, and elbow. And this was a somewhat long process. It could have been 2 or 3 hours. Well, Tom, I'm gonna be leaving now. And if you call the police in less than 6 hours, I'm going to kill your son, Jerry. Then I told him everything that I know about Jerry, from his address, his workplace, Jerry's fiance's name, and even Jerry's mom's name. Remember, don't take any wooden nickels! Then I hit him as hard as I could and knocked him out, and then slipped out the way I came in. This is the end of part 1, and if you think this is bad, remember, physical wounds can heal. What I do to Jerry is life-destroying without actually killing him. Edit. I was wearing clothing that covered my identity completely. I thought that was a given. I was just told by the people who run this sub that I couldn't use acronyms, so I had to change the names. Sorry. Edit. I recently did some snooping and found out that Tom died of a heart attack about a year ago. Jerry is out of prison and is now living in Tom's house, and I really appreciate the fact that I know where he lives and who he's dating. Okay, well, honestly, Tom and Jerry, they deserve everything that's coming to them, and I know it's not necessarily my place to say. I'm not the moral police here, but honestly, can anyone disagree that the Tom and Jerry here are scum? Because I think we'd be hard-pressed to find someone who does. Alright, now part 2. My personal crusade against the men that destroyed the person I could have become. Part 2. Part 2. Jerry's turn. So, in part 1, Jerry was my stepbrother who is 10 years older than me and started touching me inappropriately in a horrible way when I was 7. Well, this is the part where I destroyed his life, like he and his father destroyed my childhood. So at this point, I've completed my revenge against Tom, Jerry's dad, and I've completely tracked everything Jerry does and everything Jerry is involved in. So what did I want to take from Jerry? I wrote a list, other than just life gone. 1. His job. As I said, he became a teacher at an elementary school, and in my opinion, that needed to end. 2. His relationships. At that point in my life, I haven't had any resemblance of what a real relationship is in my life. 3. His reputation with his family and his church. 4. His physical ability. I needed to show him that I was now able to destroy him with very little effort. 5. His freedom. He has locked me in a cage that has no key. First, his job. I made an anonymous call to the school he worked at posing as an older brother of a student in his class and said a few things that I had researched. Now, of course, a random phone call isn't going to get him fired, so I let this one go for the time being. Second, his relationships. This was in the form of a letter left on Jerry's fiance's car with the truth and an idea for her to not just take my word for it and go on his PC at home. Now, if you know absolutely anything about kid diddlers, you know that they always keep incriminating evidence in their crap. Well, I don't know what she found, but Jerry was staying at Tom's house less than a week after the note. Well, the final part of my revenge came only a few days after those 2 parts. So as you might expect, I had been following Jerry for a while now, and he used to go out with a few friends from his church to the same bar almost every weekend. So now is my time to show him my face for the first time in over a decade. Except this time, I stood face to face with Jerry. I was no longer a small child, so I waited for the perfect night, a night that had a large number of people from his church, and he had enough to drink to get a DUI. I did not want him to be so drunk that he wouldn't be able to put up a good fight. Here we go, walking into the bar and staring at Jerry until he noticed me. I could tell that he had no clue who I was. I started talking loud enough to be heard clearly by him and his friends. "Hi, Jerry," I used his full name. "How have you been? Do I know you?" Yes, you do. How could you forget about your little stepbrother? The one you violated over and over again when I was 7 years old. How about we talk outside, just the 2 of us? Or we could talk about how you're a kid diddler in here in front of all your friends. I turn around and walk outside, and the freaking idiot actually followed me. To be honest, I thought it was gonna be harder than that to get him outside. I did not let him say one word. As soon as we were out back of the bar, I started dealing damage to Jerry, and he had no chance against me. I beat him soundly. Then when his friends came out, I told them everything Jerry was, and everything Jerry's dad, Tom, was, and who I was. And as if my luck wasn't good enough, one of the men that was there remembered me from when I was forced to go to church with Jerry, and I was believed for the first time in my life. Someone believed me. Jerry, once he had gained his composure, which took a while, jumped into his car and started the 45-minute drive to his dad's house. Then I made a phone call to the police and said that there was a man driving under the influence and gave them his license plate number. Let me guess, you all think, wow, Gus, a DUI, that's it? No, dear readers, it's not just a DUI. Jerry just so happened to be in possession of a stolen firearm that was stolen during a terrible breaking and entering just a few weeks before. That put one man in the hospital for 2 or 3 weeks. Good night. Alright, so there is one more part to the story. However, we're not gonna read it today because it's pretty long, and we'll just save him for next time. But tell me what you guys think so far. This is a really good story. I mean, really, really dark, but I mean, he is getting his revenge. Alright, this story's called He Killed My Fish. I made his life a little bit harder. So, my ex-boyfriend kinda sucks. A lot. He cheated on me, and there was some emotional abuse. He stole my $50 hoodie, and has been giving me the runaround for at least a month. I was pretty much keeping to myself, until around 2 weeks ago, a mutual friend confided in me that he killed my fish by pouring vape juice into the tank and starving them. We won the fish at the fair together over the summer. He decided to keep them because I had cats who could easily kill the fish. I wanted to get my fish back because fish were allowed in the dorms. He said he didn't want to bring them in fear of the tank tipping over on the drive, which seemed reasonable. Now, these were just goldfish, but it absolutely enraged me nonetheless. Those were living things. I was incredibly upset, so I plotted, almost as if fate intervened. I was on TikTok the next day and found a video of a guy saying what to do to make someone's life a little bit harder. I bought 2.5 pounds of miscellaneous cut keys and 100 plastic ID keychains. Yesterday, everything came in. The same mutual friend and I sat down. I wrote his phone number on every single ID and added a key onto it. We then drove around town and dropped them everywhere. Target, side streets, grocery stores, everywhere we could think of. So he'll start getting random calls about his set of keys that he never lost, at least 100. I'll update if he says anything about it. I feel like that revenge depends too much on the decency of people. You will get some calls, but not all 100.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.